Hey everybody, how you doing? Hope you're well, and thank you for joining me. This is going to be efficient, I intend, because I know that everyone wants to watch Monday Night Football. Now, let me explain what's going on here. First of all, Christian Peeples, famous local Oakland Politico, who's the Alameda County Board of Supervisors representative and has been on the Alameda County Board of Supervisors for some time, sent me an article written by someone named J.K. Dineen, and I went to try to read it, although I was reluctant to. It had to do with Howard Terminal, and the Chronicle has had a habit of putting out incorrect information regarding Howard Terminal. But I tried to access it, and this is what I got. The paywall. This paywall, okay? And I don't feel like going past paywalls, so I didn't. So what I did was I informed Chris. I wrote my response, which is part of the text here, it is the text here in it, and he sent me back a copy, clear text copy that I could read. And what I'm going to do to start off is read to you what I saw, and I'm going to explain my objections, which are many, to it. It starts off this way. Renderings of the Oakland A's plans to build a waterfront stadium at the Port of Oakland, courtesy the Oakland A's, shows these renderings, right? And it writes, the renderings of the Oakland A's proposed ballpark at Howard Terminal show towers and mid-rise buildings sprouting up behind home plate and swooping in a semicircle from home plate to the left field bleachers. For city planners, the collection of glassy buildings depicted in these proposals is more than just an effort to create a busy waterfront neighborhood that has a lure beyond the team's 81 home games. The buildings, 1.5 million square feet of office space, 3,000 housing units, 3,500 seat concert venue, and 200,000 square feet of retail space, a 400-room hotel, are an economic engine that will pay for hundreds of millions of dollars in infrastructure improvements. Without them, he writes, the 35,000 seat ballpark can't be built. And at that, I stopped reading. And the reason I stopped reading, pure and simple, folks, is it's not true at all. And the reason it's not true is if you actually, first of all, if you actually know the project, you understand tax increment financing, and you know how to do the math, you'll find out real quick that you can finance the infrastructure improvements that the athletics want to have paid for up front, or want to pay for up front and be reimbursed for, out of the assessed value of the ballpark and projects if they equal $2 billion base year. So in order to show you that, I called up my nifty Howard Terminal spreadsheet to go over these numbers with you. I'm going to enlarge these so that you can get a better picture of what's happening here as we go along. And I will zoom in here at 200. There we go. Okay, cool. All right. So let's say that the assessed value is the amount of value the government says the structure is worth. So if it took $2 billion to build it, that's going to be its assessed value coming out. So that's number 9 here. All right. So we plug that in. We then say, all right, what's the AV, or assessed value rate of growth, going to be? Okay, and that is over here. And that is over here where it reads, as we go through the spreadsheet, 0.04, and that is 4% per annum or per year. All right. So you can see that yields 80 million in first year increment, which at 1% is $800,000. And then we continue to scale up from there. So what does that give us at the end of a 45-year period? It gives us here 1,617,411,354.36. Okay. Now, if we were to use just half of that as the basis for a bond issue, there'd be a bond issue of 808 million. We could afford to give the athletics $458 million. Excuse me, $350 million for the infrastructure and have $458,705,677.18 left over. Now note, all of what I showed you, all of it is strictly, all right, strictly, I emphasize this, strictly from the ballpark with no additional offices. In other words, the total Howard Terminal project is slated to cost $12 billion, which is the assessed value measure you want to use. You're better off actually using the breakdown and then a per square footage multiple to achieve that on a yearly basis. In other words, take that 12 billion and, well, do what it's really going to happen. It's going to be phased in. There's actually a sheet that the one thing Century Urban did well is presented that shows that. Okay. But I digress. Point is that if you just take the stadium alone, and for good measure, add the event center if you want to target your assessed value, which you should do as a good redevelopment officer. You should always be targeting your assessed value objectives. Always, because then that gets you your tax increment revenue objectives. You understand what I'm saying? That's something that the city forgot how to do under the direction of my friend Oakland Mayor's Libby Chef. Tried to tell her, but I digress. My point is you should always target your fiscal objectives with redevelopment, because that will allow you to properly align your development goals and plans. All right. Now, and financing on a per building basis. Now, simple fact of the matter is this little demonstration alone proves that what the Chronicle reporter wrote was wrong. Okay. So let's continue, with a read of what this person put out, having just that. I told Chris, I stopped reading this thing when I got there because at that point it was immediately garbage. All right. Now, let me go back and continue. All right. The person writes, it is a formula that cities increasingly use to fund ballparks without public money. A city or county creates an infrastructure financing district known as an IFD. The IFD issues bonds to pay for everything from parks to streets, sewers to affordable housing. Those bonds are serviced with taxes collected from all the ancillary development surrounding the ballpark, such as housing and office space. Everybody is happy. So this is where this person is wrong. All right. Because what this person tried to do is write this without explaining. Get this, okay? Excuse me. Without explaining tax increment financing. Newsflash. Only in California do you have the...
One sec.
Okay. Only in California do you have enhanced infrastructure financing district legislation.
Working on that.
Hey, Siri, stop. Thank you.
No problem.
Only in California do you have that. All right? No place else. And it's not based on ancillary development around the ballpark. What I just showed you is what J.K. Dineen completely missed. that the ballpark must be, look at me, must be privately financed so that the athletics are paying the annual property tax, which then does what? Jumpstarts the tax increment financing revenue engine. That's what. So Dineen just completely got it wrong. And the Chronicle's done this a lot. The Chronicle has found these ways to talk about Howard Terminal without explaining tax increment financing. My guess is they don't want to draw attention to what I've done because they know that the minute they start talking about Howard Terminal and tax increment financing, my material comes up. They wind up promoting me. They don't want to do that. All right. Hey, dirty? Yeah, of course it's dirty. Absolutely. My counter, keep talking about it more because by staying out of my niche, they've helped me establish my niche. Thank you. The bottom line is that I've already showed you that a privately financed Howard Terminal Stadium, as intended, okay, will on its own generate enough tax increment revenue for the A's to collect a payback on the $350 million in infrastructure money it plans to spend. Okay. Now, some of you may be confused. You might think, wait a minute, how is the stadium privately financed? And yet we're talking about public money for the infrastructure. Easy. There's actually two sections here. The infrastructure is the underpinning. All right. Roads, sewers, aquifers, land preparation, the water table and sea rise table that have to be built to essentially lift the project and be built on a gigantic platform. That's the 350 million goes to. But the structure of the stadium itself, that's different. The A's will pay that to the tune of, I would say, 1.8 billion when all is said and done, closer to 2 billion the way things are going. You add inflation, it's going to be way north of $2 billion if it's built in the Bay Area. If it's built in Las Vegas, it'll be about 2 billion, maybe 1.9 billion. All right. But the Athletics pay for that through a combination of their own revenues, revenue assistance from Major League Baseball in the form of a loan, and sponsorship monies. For example, the Warriors Stadium, Chase Arena, successfully collected over $2 billion in sponsorships. $2 billion. Hey, the facility costs just a little bit under that itself. So the Warriors made a killing off Chase Arena. And they're still smiling. All right. That's kind of what the A's or Athletics are hoping for in this instance. But they have to have the land prep. And that's where the infrastructure cost comes in. That has long been a problem at Howard Terminal. All right. But I hope you understand that J.K. Dineen, if I'm pronouncing that person's name correctly, got it all wrong from the start. Just completely bungled the idea. And then it gets worse. Then the person says, all right, they mentioned talking about Atlanta. They mentioned all these other examples, but none of these examples use tax increment financing. All right. Not in the way that this is proposed. Okay. They say in Atlanta, the office buildings were supposed to help pay for the Braves' new stadium in Cobb County have not been built. Let me stop you right there. You want to know why that's not relevant? Okay. Because, again, if I'm able to gain money from just the baseball stadium, and I know the A's have the financing for that, what do I need to worry about the other offices for? I don't. I asked Dave Cobble on my show earlier this year if they needed a development partner. He said yes. The city didn't even try to find them one. Las Vegas is repeat with efforts to try to find development partners for the Athletics, but not the city of Oakland. The city of Oakland has not done that. Okay. The A's have basically screamed out, hey, we need help. Help them. Okay. Didn't do that. All right. The reason why I say that is this, because I said to anybody who wouldn't listen, hey, they say that's 12 billion. You don't know that that's going to be built. So don't pay attention to that. Pay attention to the ballpark first. You know the ballpark is going to be built. Look at the tax increment financing, throw that off from that, because as I've said before, and I'll say again, the beauty of tax increment financing in sports is that you are looking at uncommonly expensive structures, 2 billion, 5 billion, that can then generate, when they're built, if they're privately financed, a huge tax increment revenue throw off that can solve a great many ills. That is a mathematical fact. Why? Because you're only counting on the payment of the property tax. That's it. You're not counting on whether or not the building is filled. Once the building is built, it's considered online by the county of Alameda. Boom, you pay your property taxes, just 1% of the value. That's it. Okay? You're going to generate a ton of revenue from the stadium to pay for that annually. So that's a drop in the bucket. But this person, this just Dineen person, just screwed up the whole thing. Just screwed up the whole thing, all right? Then goes to continually use these examples. In Washington, D.C., the city is fighting with Evans, D.C., which runs National Park, over the authorities' failure to make good on promises to build 46,000 square feet of commercial and retail space. What does that have to do with Howard Terminal? Nothing. Again, the stadium throws off enough money to pay for the infrastructure, plus an additional $468 million that could be used for community benefits if you do your tax increment financing revenue right. Well, and get this, folks, even though here I use the 4% rate of growth in assessed value variable, do you know what the actual, look at me, look at my eyes. Do you know what the actual rate of growth is down there? It has been 6.53% over the past 10 years. And if you take a look at Larry Cosmott's estimates, consultant, he says that over a shorter period of years, the rate of growth in assessed value average for Oakland entirely has been just north of 8%. So hey, are we leaving the money on the table if we're just using a 4% calculation? Of course we are. That's why it's a good idea to have a fan of options, of options, okay? Saying, hey, look, we know we're going to get, you calculate what you can get. We know we're going to get 4%, 6%. Let's go for 6% and structure our development around that. They can go that high. I wouldn't go up to 8 myself. You always want to design the bond issue so that you're not sweating whether or not it can pay for itself. That's the idea. All right. Now, the city has never laid out this kind of conversation with you. Hey, Veronica Cummings, when I saw her, now I'm dropping her name, at the November 19th, 2019, November 20th, 2019 town hall that Oakland Councilmember Nikki Fortunato Bass held, neither one of them wanted me to speak about how tax increment financing worked or the revenue that could be expected with just a $500 million value stadium. Oh, we don't want to have that out there right now. Why? Why? What are you hiding? Okay. Keith Willis says, Oakland politicians don't seem like they have any priority when it comes to this project. Do they believe it will be a benefit because if they kill it to Do they believe it will be a benefit if they kill it to their political career and understand that? Almost like they don't care. I'll address that one a little bit later. But my point is that the fact of the matter, if you take a look at these numbers, is that at a very modest 4% rate of growth per year, it can definitely pay for the infrastructure and for $458 million of community benefits. Guess what? We don't even know the cost of that, okay, at all. We don't know. A say, hey, it's going to be a little bit, more than that. Okay. Well, guess what? Then design a scenario around 6%. I haven't done that, but you know what? I could go back and see what it looks like. In fact, why don't I do that? Why don't I go back to the spreadsheet and see what the world looks like with a 6% rate of growth annually? That'll be fun, won't it? 6.06. There we go. There. Okay. Ooh, okay. We didn't quite get there yet. So we're going to take this, copy that, paste that there, okay? And then go all the way down here. Ooh, and there we go. What do we get? Holy fick holy. 3,610,000,000 at just 6%, which gets us what? It gets us the bonding capacity of 1,805,000,000. We can give the A's 350 million out of that for infrastructure and still pocket the Public Financing Authority for Howard Terminal can just pocket 1.45 billion and share some of that with East Oakland by law. That's the way SB293 Skinner was written. In fact, that's the way enhanced infrastructure financing law is written, but you never know that if you read the SF Chronicle. Now, would you? No. Sloppy stuff. Come to me. You're better off listening to me. You're better off coming to me, okay? You get the real skinny, all right? You get the real deal what's happening. But let's continue anyway, looking at that mess of a piece. Oh, my Lord. Then he goes on and says, at a time when this is what gets me. Meanwhile, in Oakland, the EIFD is slated to generate about $517 million over the course of the 45-year bond period. It says, which would pay for streets, sewers, and 18 acres of open space. This person never bothered to run the numbers to see if that 517 million was correct. All right. Oh, and it's a fair bet that he probably used someone's present value estimate based on what they came up with, which is also wrong. Why? Simple. Very simple, folks. Do you happen to know what the difference is between an assessed value calculation for present value and a redevelopment tax increment financing calculation? I will tell you, both of them have different independent variables. Your present value calculation has your rate, right? But guess what? The assessed value part of the tax increment financing calculation has its own growth rate, which is separate from a common rate that you would use in present value. So you have two variables that work when you're talking about tax increment revenue. You're talking about the rate of growth of assessed value, but then also you're talking about what the inflation rate happens to be at the time that land is turned over. So you always have to have a calculation in place or be mindful of calculation of turnover rate. How much of land is bought and turned over? Okay. Otherwise, you'll get it wrong consistently. Word of advice: the only reason consultants use present value is because there's some people who think that the number out there is so big that they can't comprehend it. They're doing it the wrong fucking way. The way to do it is the way that I've done it. Why? You break down each and every year. Listen to me. And if you disagree, build your own example, but listen to me, because then we can fight about it. Listen to me. You build a year after year column or set of columns listing your revenue. Okay. Both with a base year, and then what happens if you started collecting it from the base year of the taxing agencies, which would put it at, you guessed it, total TIF revenue base year, much greater, like to the tune of $21 million the second year and 20 million the first year, as opposed to 800 million. All right. Or excuse me, in this case, 1.2 million using 6%. 800 would be 800,000 if you're 4%. If you just let the taxing agencies have their base year, you would say, Zinni, what do you mean you're going too fast? All right. When you pay $1 of property tax money, that gets split. Partway the city of Oakland, they keep 20%, actually 30%. Out County of Alameda, they keep 17%. School district has its cut. BART, AC Transit, EB Mud Flood Control District, okay? Those are all your taxing agencies, all right? So the new model of tax increment financing says, well, let them keep the base year. I'm like, fuck that, man. I'm going to legislature and I'm saying, hey, can I negotiate with these folks to help them build things with this money we're going to throw off? Because it's just 55 acres. Why keep them out of it? Why not let them do deals with us? We're collecting the money, right? All you got to do is go and change the law, folks. Instead of these people like, well, it's the law. The law says, go and change the law at Sacramento. Stop being a wuss. Doggone it. Okay? It's ridiculous stuff, folks. It's absolutely ridiculous. The way the whole thing is done. And then you take that money and you do a bond sizing. I don't have my bond sizing here. I very simply lopped it off and said, okay, debt coverage ratio 50%. I'll take half of that, which is 1.8 billion. That's the simple one. The fun one is when you model it out. Okay, you model out your revenues. That's the fun part. All right. The really good studies, the really good consulting work does that. It models out the revenues. That's what you're missing. That's what they didn't tell you. That's what I'm telling you. I've done this for 37 years. Okay. That's why I kept saying it to everybody. Hey, let me do it. And I'm glad a lot of you started advocating for me. Thank you very much. All right. And then we will finish this by going down here. This is the same song. This person goes around and talks to all these different people. All right. And talks about, well, it doesn't work if you're not able to fill your buildings. I think you know now that filling your office space has nothing to do with the success or failure of Howard Terminal. Nothing. It's the structure of the collection, which is based on the privately financed, look at me here, look at my eyes, privately financed stadium. That's critical. It must be privately financed, which means the A's, and they say they would love to pay their property tax. Bravo. It's just 1%. It's cheap. They know it, and now you know it. It's not like someplace else where the property tax rates are a lot higher. They get in a bargain. Okay? They get in a bargain. Be a critical thinker about what media puts out. And if you have any questions, come to me. And then say to the city, hey, Zinni's done this for 37 years. You need to have him running this project. If you have any questions about what I've just put to you, put them in the comments section or send me an email right here I'm easy to contact. It is Zenny. I'll give you my Zenny at zenny62.com. This makes it easier for me to get to my non-corporate stuff there. Just send me an email. All right. Or if you want to text me, there it is, since texting is the thing nowadays. You can also text me with any questions. Boom. Now let me get to Mr. Willis' question before I go. Oakland politicians don't seem like they have any priority when it comes to this project. Do they believe it will be a benefit if they kill it to their political career, almost like they don't care? I think what's happened is not so much they don't care, Keith. They believe the Athletics are on their way to Las Vegas, and they are miffed that the Athletics have this dual path that they bragged about. We'll find out where the Athletics are during the World Series, because I predict that the media day will consist of a question put to Major League Baseball Commissioner Bob Manfred about where Oakland is in its status. And then we'll find out where everything is. And I think that's what Dave Cobble, the president of the A's, and John Fisher, A's owner, are waiting to happen, even though I believe behind closed doors, they're working toward some type of resolution of this. But you have to remember something. I don't believe you're going to get a definitive answer during the World Series. You might get a presentation of what the Athletics facility would look like in Las Vegas. You might get it. But they're waiting for what happens, and I don't care what anyone says, in the election. Nevada may get a new governor. I hope Steve Sisolak gets reelected, but it could be Joe Lombardo, sheriff. Oakland, we have 10 people running for mayor. And given how crazy ranked choice voting is, you can pick up to 5 possible candidates. Anybody could be mayor. That's on the ballot, of course. But you can write in. So my point is, be an informed citizen, an informed voter, but also be aware of people who say, well, sports don't make any money for any of this garbage. If anything, and I'll present this in another video, because of the existence of the internet, the value of sports to urban economy has increased manyfold. Why do you think Las Vegas is going after so many sports events? So to close, keep this in mind. The article is wrong because the stadium is privately financed, and at $2 billion, it produces enough tax increment financing revenue to pay for its infrastructure. You don't have to worry about offices filling up or any other buildings being built. The article is wrong. Subscribe to Zenny62 and bookmark oaklandnewsnowblog.com. And that ends this broadcast. Thank you.